just FYI.
Okay.
Okay. Rick, as senior member of the board, can get started in your mind. All right. So welcome to Board of Adjustment tonight. Let's start by having a pledge allegiance. Neil, if you'll lead us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the States of
Thank you. As a slight change to our business tonight, in as much as our vice chair, Bryce Froer, moved on to a different board, and our chair, Laura Warburton, is not here tonight, and she's not coming. Is that correct? So in their absence, I would move that we go to action item number 4 and nominate and vote towards a new chair and vice chair for 2025 so we can conduct business tonight. So with that, is there a motion for chair for 2025? It's pretty quiet. Rex.
I would second that Rex Mumford be chair for the year 2025.
Is there any other discussion or motions?
second that as well.
Okay. Call for a vote. Neil?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay, and I'll vote aye. Okay, and thank you. And for vice chair, is there a motion for vice chair?
Do I motion or
Turn your name around so we know. Neil and I are, Marshall. I just couldn't remember you. Thank you.
Yes.
Neil makes a motion.
I would like to make a motion that Marshall McGonigal be nominated as vice chair.
I would second that.
Okay, motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor? Oh, we'll do a call. Neil?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And I'll vote aye. Okay, thank you. So for next year, we'll have Marshall as vice chair. In my absence, you take charge. Okay. All right, with that, we don't need to do more than review the minutes if everyone's had a chance to do that. Trying to see who here. Marshall, you was here and myself.
Thanks.
So with that, as I reviewed them, I didn't see any major changes to.
I saw no issues.
Did you?
I didn't see any issues as I was not present.
Here, Marshall, did you see any?
I saw no issues.
Okay. Unless there's issues, I would just move that we approve them as they are recorded. Okay, with that, we'll go to our first Board of Adjustment 2024-08 request for a 7-foot variance to the minimum 20-foot setback standard in the Forest Valley 3 zone. And Tammy's presenting that tonight.
Yes, thank you, board members. Let me get in here and just kind of orient you to where this property is located. This is located over in Ogden Valley at 4100 North and approximately 4000 East. Sorry, Tiffany, hopefully you can hear me okay. This is, let me just pull up a little bit of information here for you, but this is a 1.4 acre piece in the Forest Valley 3 zone. And I'm trying to see if this layer list will come up here. Something to note about the Forest Valley 3 zone is the setbacks are a little bit different than they are in the Agricultural Valley 3 zone, which is right next door here. Here we go. So as you can see, this parcel is right. Boy, it's really gonna give me a hard time. Sorry, guys. I think we've got some issues with GeoGizmo anyway. This is the Forest Valley 3 zone here. This is the AV3 zone here. The setbacks in the AV3 zone, the side setbacks specifically are 10 feet on one side and 14 on the other. In the Forest Valley 3 zone, the side setbacks are 20 feet. This particular parcel has a unique property feature that makes it difficult to adhere to the setbacks because it has a stream corridor that runs right through the middle of it here, which, as you can see, kind of limits the buildable area to either up north or closer to the road. Let me show you. Let me pull up the presentation here. Let me see if I can turn off the zoning here so you can get a better look. I do have comments from county engineering. The county engineers typically have comments with regards to stream corridor setbacks. They manage stormwater and deal with all kinds of flooding issues. So they're very familiar with this property and with the water issues on this particular property. I will tell you that the setback from the high water mark of this stream is 75 feet. So 75 feet to the east of this pushes a buildable area pretty close to that eastern boundary. Let me pull this up here. Here we go. Can you guys, oh, bear with me.
I mean, you said 75, but in the document, it shows a 50-foot stream.
Oh,
corridor.
I'm sorry. It is a 50-foot.
Okay.
Sorry. I was thinking of their request for a 25-foot variance to that and added them instead of subtracted them. Thank you. Here we go. Okay. Just some details about this property and what the applicant is proposing here. This is, just so you know, there's a home to the north. There's a vacant parcel to the east and a home to the west. The vacant parcel to the east is 1.4 acres. It is not currently a buildable parcel. And for the Forest Valley 3 zone, it doesn't meet the minimum for area and width in order to become a buildable parcel. And so, at least for the foreseeable future, unless there are zoning changes, this lot cannot necessarily be built upon. And the applicant wanted to make sure that that was pointed out so that we were aware that this may not necessarily be a nuisance to anyone on the east side if he's pushed a little bit closer. This is where he's proposing to locate his home. Applicant, as is stated in the narrative, which is contained in the staff report, is proposing a single level dwelling that is ADA compliant. Yes.
The question.
Uh-huh.
You say the one to the east is not a buildable lot
Mhm.
because of the size. It's 1.4 acres, but according to the what I have, the information I have, the one that's in question is also 1.4 acres.
Yes, that's a good question. This one has actually been grandfathered in. It meets the requirements to be grandfathered in as a lot of record. And so it's considered a buildable parcel.
Okay.
Thank you for pointing that out. To the right is a sketch of their home if they were to adhere to the 50-foot stream corridor setback. And this is pushed right up against their 20-foot setback, just so you know. So this is with no variance to the side setback, no variance to the stream corridor setback. As you can see, that high water mark would cut right through where they are looking to build. So they're looking for two things, actually. They're looking for a 25-foot variance to that 50-foot stream corridor setback, and they're looking for a 6.5-foot variance to the side setback on the east side. And I'll explain why here. Actually, let me go back here. This line right here, this side of their building is about 134 feet. And so in an attempt to kind of break up the monotony of 124 feet of continuous roof line, the applicant, and I'm going to see if I have it in here. If not, I'll pull it up. They are proposing to bump out a small section of their home right about here, about 6 feet out by about 25 feet, just to break up that monotony. I will tell you that comments from Gary Myers, the county engineer, indicate he'd rather see it pushed even further away. He'd rather see it encroach further into a side setback and further away from that stream corridor. But that of course is up to the board. At the moment, the applicant is requesting to encroach 5 feet 8 inches into that 20-foot setback because of his, what he feels are constraints to being able to build his home and enjoy his property the way that his neighbors do. So when we look at requests for variances, as a board of adjustment, we have a set of criteria that we look at. And those are also outlined in your staff report, but we're looking at whether or not this is a hardship that's self-imposed, whether it prohibits the property owner from enjoying the same rights as his neighboring property owners, which in this case would be to be able to build a home that works for his family. And whether or not not granting the variance might cause an unreasonable hardship. So there's a few of these here. Are there special circumstances that would warrant granting a variance? In this case, you may determine that the fact that there's a stream corridor that goes through there certainly constitutes as a special circumstance that would limit his ability to be able to enjoy similar property rights. That is all I've got.
I mean, I don't know if you can answer this, or
I'll
if,
do my
if
best.
legal was here, if we were to grant this,
Mhm.
and let's say this 100-year storm comes and the water damages their house, does that fall? Is there any liability on the county for approving this? Knowing that it is in the high water mark would reach that house?
I'm probably going to defer to Rick. I would assume that Cortland would have a good answer for that. And I think I
Yeah,
know it, but
as far as the county goes, we're indemnified on those types of things. As long as we've worked through engineering on that, we would be okay.
I will tell you that the applicant has worked extensively with county engineering in looking at foundation issues, how to grade the lot, all of that to try and mitigate as best they can. The applicant has addressed pretty much all of those. This is his next hurdle. So he's working quite closely with engineering and looking at that.
So, Tammy, the stream is a seasonal stream. It's not year round, correct?
Correct.
Do we have any idea what the peak flow of this stream is on an average year?
That's a good question.
Engineering would know that.
Yeah, engineering would know that. I did request that engineering be here tonight. They were unavailable to be able to make the meeting to answer questions like that. So I'm sorry I don't have that. I'm happy to try and get that information if
But
you'd like.
So it does sound like, though, from your interaction with engineering, that their recommendation is to push this further away from the stream if possible.
If you want a number, Gary would like to see it as close as 10 feet from their east lot boundary.
I have a follow-up question to Nils. Is the setback from the stream due to risk for the property owner and his the high water flood option or possibility, or is it to keep us out of the stream bed?
It's the former.
Okay, it's because they're worried about a potential 100-year storm that could
Correct.
flood the.
And it also protects riparian habitat. There's some other reasons on the
Mhm.
stream setback.
Yeah.
I have another question on this paperwork. It shows that this study has been done, that the 100-year data shows that the stream to have a flow of less than 180 cubic feet per second.
Mhm.
What does that mean? I mean, anything could be less. It reaches 180 and it's 180 cubic feet per second and less, or could it be 20 cubic feet per second? What is the actual number? Not what is, it says to have a flow less than 180. That gives us 179 options that are less than 180.
Right.
So what is the actual number
The actual flow rate in that
for the 100-year?
for the 100-year,
Yes.
I believe that is the peak.
So 180
180.
Would be the peak. in-
CFS.
Yeah, in a severe flood incident, yes.
Okay.
And
I-
engineering's job is to look at worst case scenario. What's worst case scenario here and how can we work backward from there?
I don't think that 36-inch pipe would handle.
I-
180
No, there's no way.
CFS.
I deal with water quite often, and so on a daily basis. And 180 CFS would take at least a 5-foot culvert.
Mhm.
This is a 3-foot culvert, and you can tell that it's washed rocks into it.
Mhm.
So it has had some significant flash flood events over the years.
I'm sure that we've had them given the area and the amount of water that they do get, especially over the winter time, but I can't speak to anything more specific than that without engineering here,
Do you know
unfortunately.
where this culvert's actually at on the property?
No, I don't actually.
Is it unreasonable to ask them to raise the house?
I think they've got that as part of their
is
plans,
that
actually.
part of-
That's what they've worked with Gary. He mentioned raising the home, actually.
See.
So the total height from floor to highest point of the roof is about 26, 27 feet is what they're proposing. And that doesn't include the elevation from the grade.
So that was my concern was the foundation height.
Mhm.
Do you know what the this house is proposed at? Roughly. I don't see it anywhere. See.
Let's see, sorry, I'm trying to zoom in here. It looks like it's roughly 7,000 square feet. They've got 134 feet by 57 feet. That includes garages. And that's just the footprint of the foundation.
Okay, as we take a minute, do you have more that you'd like to present?
That's all I've got.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Unless somebody has an additional question for Tammy. Is the applicant?
I am not
You,
sure
the
if there's
applicant?
someone, oh, there we go.
Like to address the board? You will come up to the podium and state your name and address. Currently reside.
I'm Robert Heslop. The address is 4116 East, 4100 North in Liberty.
You currently reside.
No, I currently reside in Eden. It's a rental. I think it's 3145 North, Big Piney Drive.
All right. You want to share your
Yeah, do you guys have
Approach
any
on-
questions for me that maybe she didn't answer or that I can help you out with on that?
I know it's not shown on your plot map, but where I guess is your septic system? Because I know that has to have 100 feet of clearance off the stream.
Septic system has been approved already through the health department. It sits on the south side of the property closest to the street.
closest to the street?
Yes, yes. And you asked the question where that culvert was at. That culvert that was full, that actually goes under 4100 North, which is that main road that's right there.
The frontage road.
Yes.
What are your thoughts about moving the house further east and
I'm-
asking for a,
I'm fine with that. I was trying, when I designed this, I was trying to meet all of the setbacks as close as possible without going too far one way or another.
So the, tell me your name again. Sorry.
Robert,
Robert. The jog out to break up that 130-foot roof line.
yes,
Um, is that the encroachment into the easement?
yes,
So
correct.
without that, there is no encroachment
no.
right now.
Correct. Yep. And that's purely just to visually, break that up. I mean, we're nothing against barn dominiums. We're trying to do something that's appealing to my neighbors too. I don't want to just make something that's there.
How far up does that extend? I know it says 150 square foot total, but how far?
6.5 feet
Yeah,
into that.
Can you just clarify the square footage? There was a question on.
4,500 square feet.
7,000 was high.
Yeah, that is,
So 45, is that the living space or is that the total under the roof?
sorry, it's 4,500 square feet with, that's everything. That's roof space, everything.
So it's garage and everything.
Yes,
That
yeah,
includes the garage?
correct. Yes.
So the house itself is 3,000.
No, the house itself, it's a very small garage. This does not have a big garage. The house itself's like 4,700 or 4,500 square feet. I can't remember off the top of my head. We've gone back and forth so many times in design on this, so.
Did anyone with planning ever discuss just cantilevering out to break up that roof line, which would not encroach on the setback?
I see, and I wasn't sure. No, I wasn't sure if you could cantilever out or if it's just foundation that encroaches into that. We could absolutely cantilever out and keep the foundation within the 20 feet of
Because
that.
Tammy, I don't know, there's another term, I call it cantilever, but what is the county allowed, you know?
Let me pull up our ordinance. We do have some allowances for what we term projections.
Projections, yeah.
Yeah. Let me share this with you. Now, I will say our ordinance is very specific about what can project, which architectural element can project into which setback.
So item 5 states cantilevers may not project more than 2 feet into the required front and rear, and they're not allowed on the side yard setback. If I'm reading that correct, that's item 5.
Mhm.
But does that mean even if it's cantilevered, or you don't even allow them?
The only things that we allow according to our ordinance to project into a side yard setback. If you look at number 1, 18 inches into side yard setbacks, belt courses, sills, lintels. Number 2, cornices, eaves, gutters, 2 feet into a side yard setback. Outside stairways, flues, chimneys, 3 feet into a side yard setback. So they're much more limited as far as projections go into side yard setbacks. Does that answer your question?
And I take it this 150-foot square or extent projection is not it's not a fireplace. Is it a terrace
What?
or a balcony?
Sorry, yes, that is actually where the fireplace will be.
Oh, it is a fireplace?
Yes. Well, it's living, it's a family living room, but the fireplace will be located on that wall.
I don't know how the county, if there was because it states specifically what the projections can be, but if the entire projection's not just that item, how does the county view that?
We stick pretty closely to the ordinance. So if it's not specifically stated, and we did look at projections when we were reviewing this application, and it didn't fit into any of these categories.
So we would need the entire variance to allow for what's been proposed at least.
Right. Now, they may be able to be granted between 1.5 feet and 3 feet. I don't think it would accomplish the purposes that engineering would like to see, or perhaps that the applicant would like to see, but that is up to the board to determine.
I have another question, Tammy. I'm not sure if you've got the answer for this one, but is there possibilities that the stream where it's seasonal could be, the channel could be moved? Could he dig further to the west or lower it to help mitigate possible flooding?
Typically, the Army Corps of Engineers is involved in that, and I'm sure that there have been extensive discussions between the applicant and engineering, and I'll probably let him speak to that where we don't have engineering here.
That actually was our original plan, was to move that stream to the west. But after discussing that with engineering, and as Tammy said, that raises a whole bunch of other issues with the Army Corps of Engineers in permitting and all of that stuff. So that was when we discussed if we could get a variance to try and make it fit in this spot without having to do all that.
So Tammy, even there's not enough room on the side lot to allow for no stream interruption there, is there?
No.
Robert, one other question. Have you, just throwing out ideas to make this decision easier for us, have you talked to the owner to the east to see if you could purchase a little bit of land to move it to the east, or maybe a land swap, give them some of the land to the north?
I have, and unfortunately, right now, they're in kind of a family, how can I say that they're trying to adjust their trust in everything that the land's on, and it's tied up, which would push me out a couple years before they can even get all that settled.
This one drawing, Tammy, and you might be able to address this, but the one with the red line around it. And I don't know northeast, southwest on this map very well, but I think it's on the west side. It looks like it's a driveway or a private easement or something.
River Drive, it looks like. I think mine says River
Looks like a
Drive.
Driveway to the back property.
Is that your shows?
Says River Drive on
Yeah,
it.
mentions River Drive as well.
Oh, yeah.
Are you talking about this drawing here?
Oh,
So that drawing shows the rear of the property set correct. The other one that you have in the U-turn area map has the back property line encroaching on the neighbor's place.
Mhm.
It's a different picture than the one you've got on right now. Oh, it is both?
Do I have the right image pulled up for you guys?
Yeah, that's.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions for Robert?
Really quick, I guess, are you guys planning on, I guess, doing this 36-inch culvert in any part of the stream?
No, we are not allowed to do that without getting the Corps of
Okay.
Engineers involved. So the stream has to stay the way it is. That's why we're asking for this.
When did you purchase the lot?
Last year, February of last year.
Were you aware when you purchased of the stream and challenges of the building envelope bring to the counties?
I was under the impression that the stream could be moved to the west. And like I said, that was the original plan, was to move it to, I actually did all the paperwork to start the process to move it to the west. And that's when engineering contacted me and said, hey, can we start discussing this? And so I started working with them, and this is the best route that we came up with to meet, everybody's needs on this.
Okay, any other questions for Ryan? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tammy. So one of the challenges as a board, I think that we always have is two things that we're charged with, and one is the land use code causing an unreasonable hardship for the property owner, but also, as in item B, how much of this is self-imposed due to the desire of the property owner to build a structure, perhaps. And I really struggle with these all the time because I feel like to some extent, it's always self-imposed. I mean, you could build a smaller dwelling within the footprint and it's no longer it's not a hardship nor, well, it might be a hardship because they can't build what they would like, but it gets away from the self-imposed. If we were to look at the buildable footprint without changing the stream corridor or the side setback, how big of a footprint is there? Is a question.
Looks like it takes off about setback. I can't. Is it tied up against the front setback?
Oh, Tammy?
Sorry.
Applicant is proposing to put this 50 feet from their front lot line and the front setback is 30.
Okay. So shifting this forward, and I know the septic drain field's up there now, it sounds like, but shifting this forward would eliminate the stream encroachment in the back corner there where that jog is completely. And
That's
not that extension where the garage is, perhaps. But it would
Shifting to the east would help as well.
lessen, yeah. I have a little bit of a concern, Tammy, and I wish we had engineering here because when you come and say their druthers would be, that speaks volumes. As a board, I wish we were hearing those volumes. It makes me leery about granting any variance to the stream setback because of what they've seen, especially when you read 180 CFS. That's a pretty big flow.
It's huge.
Yeah.
I would
I
love
mean-
that flow in our place.
I can tell you this, that the South Fork of the Ogden River throughout the summertime, with the exception of what's released from storage, never even reaches that. And that's a year-round stream.
Right.
So to encroach 20 feet of that, I can see engineering having some issues there. So I'm not going to be able to make a motion because of my role, but I would feel a lot more comfortable shoving this and granting the variance. I'm just talking to the board. Granting a variance to the side property lot, especially where that side property is not a buildable lot, at least today. And try to avoid the stream corridor setback completely. Thoughts though.
So you're proposing slide the entire structure to the east.
Yeah, I don't know that we can slide it
Which-
enough. I think
which
we
would-
have to slide east and directions is. South.
Board members, will you be sure to speak directly into the microphones, please? Thank you.
Sorry, I think that building footprint would have to slide south to get away from the stream corridor setback somewhat, and then, but we haven't got enough side setback to grant this large of a part, building.
Can you restate that question? I think I
Even-
know what you're trying to say.
Even if we ask the applicant to push this home to the front yard setback minimum, we're still encroaching on the stream corridor. If we pushed it all the way to the property line, we're still encroaching on the stream corridor. So there's a challenge here.
There is, and there's also a septic system that is proposed to be located right in that area.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Mhm.
I would probably eliminate his option to even build.
So sadly, as a board, our role is sometimes puts us into the realm of self-imposed. Sometimes it's economic too, but in this particular case, self-imposed based on the size of the home for the available footprint of that lot. And of course, that's why we're here, because county couldn't grant this.
Right. That is not, our job is to see whether it meets the ordinance. In this case, they can't meet the ordinance, and so we directed them towards.
For this home.
Correct.
Yeah.
For this home.
Robert, is that why the house is so far back from you have a 50-foot front setback because of the septic system?
No, I thought that it was a 50-foot setback. Is what I was being told.
So
We-
do you,
we
do you think
could-
it could go up to, you
Absolutely.
could push that right up?
Yeah, we could definitely get it up to a 30-foot setback. That's how I originally had it, but then I bumped it back to a 50-foot. Because I thought that was zoned for a 50-foot.
So Tammy, and I know we don't deal with septic, but I think from my understanding, you may know better too. I think you can put septic drain field in the setback regions, can you not?
You have to be 100 feet back from the stream.
No,
From
what
the
about
stream,
the
you-
front
but from the
setback?
street or the side setback.
I don't know the front side. I know, I just did a septic system right by a stream and that was
Oh,
Can't
yeah,
be
no,
the
can't do
already,
that.
it'd be 100 feet.
He has to have he has to have the septic system drain field, and he has to have a replacement area for the same, which is what it's showing the two green boxes here. So I'd be surprised if he could slide that all the way forward.
Could he,
Very much.
could he put the septic system on the east side along
Kind of,
that setback?
you can
Do a
see-
long,
You can see that right there.
Yeah.
I don't know where the proposed
it-
replacement is. You see this?
Yeah. Replacements that
Is it this here? Okay,
I know,
which is definitely within the 30-foot setback.
Yeah.
So at least within the realm of health department, they're okay with putting in that zone.
the topography slopes towards the front. Down.
Correct, yes. Everything actually slopes towards the stream. And do take into consideration that on here, those water calculations, those were put on there by me, not the engineering.
As
So
far as where your septic system is placed.
no, like on the narrative where it says
Oh.
how much the study was done on that was written by me, not engineering. And that
Okay.
was done by a civil guy, and I'm not 100% sure he spent a lot of time researching this.
So
That's
so the 180 CFS is not.
no, that there's nothing backing that from
Okay.
the county
Okay.
engineer.
'Cause
All right.
we're all like bewildered with this pipe.
yeah, how
That
could it
pipe
hold
would
that?
handle about 10 CFS at best.
Yeah.
My understanding was that number did come from the applicant's engineer.
It did.
Yeah, that did not come from county engineering.
Okay.
Just throwing out suggestions, Robert. I would love to see you build here. But if you came back and pushed that house to the south and to the east, maybe if you have to move your septic on the east side, run it long ways. You might have to shrink the house a little bit, but I think there's options. I hate to see you give up, but I'm
No,
very
no.
uncomfortable with the way it is, to be honest. And
No,
and I'm
that's
trying to
fine.
root for you, but I'm
That's why we're
struggling.
here is to discuss it.
Yeah.
That's all we can do. So.
And I'm a neighbor, so I like the idea of breaking up a 150-foot roof line. But possibly as it slides south, you could pull the front section over to the left and and leave the back section all the way to the west,
Just to break it that.
just to break up that roof. Yeah, there's some design options that could help, or we may not encroach as much.
Okay, any other questions? So this variance request is twofold. One is a 7-foot variance to the minimum 20-foot side setback, and actually it's 5 feet 8 inches. I'm not sure why our narrative on page 1 says 7, but 5 foot 8 inches to the minimum and 25 foot to the stream corridor. With that, is there a motion? I want to ask Rick, in lieu of us having legal here, do we do these motions separately, or is this got to be rolled into one thing?
I would roll them into one thing and then use the 5 criteria.
So those are the requests by the petitioners. Is there a motion? So our role is not necessarily to negotiate. Our role is what's been presented to us. So we either, and this doesn't preempt the applicant from coming back and asking for a lesser amount, but our role is as it's been presented. Is that correct, Rick? So
That is correct.
we're being asked 25 foot on the stream corridor, 5 feet 8 inches on the setback. Is there a motion with the board, one way or the other? Jamie, would you like to make a motion? Marshall,
I motion that we deny the request for variance.
and your reasoning?
Um, What was the terminology? It wasn't an unforeseen hardship.
Okay.
I would also say that it in line item D, it says the variance will not substantially affect the general plan and will not be contrary to the public interest. And I just don't feel like it follows the general plan close enough. It's too much of a deviation. And contrary to the public interest, there is possibility of a risk to the homeowner to build that close to the stream channel.
So Marshall, you're the one making the motion. Will you roll what Neil was just saying into your motion?
I think guys would be the
You
the
can-
sidebar. What's the proper wording?
You can reword it any way you want. Your motion to deny the request is due to,
Based on, I don't find that it would go, as far as on item A, literal enforcement would prevent the property owner from enjoying a substantial property right in developing this parcel in accordance with the Ogden Valley General Plan. As there are ways you can move the property, that's the literal enforcement should not prevent that property right.
and I would recommend also for you that there is a self-imposed aspect with this home.
And there is a self-imposed aspect with this home.
Okay, Marshall's made the motion. Is there a second to his motion?
I can second the motion.
Ben seconds the motion. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor of Marshall's motion to deny? Marshall?
Aye.
Aye.
Yep.
Aye.
Chair will vote aye also. So, I think with that, you can go back and work with the applicant, and if the county can work with it to where the home's reduced in size, that it doesn't encroach on either, then we don't see the applicant again. If he can adjust this a little bit, you could come back and try again. I hopefully applicants got a little bit of a feel from the board as to some of the concerns that would need to be met. Okay, any other discussion on this item?
Just maybe a note to the applicant that the board is held to strict rules on granting a variance, that we have to show that all of these criteria have been met. And so it's a challenge to grant.
I think that's good.
So we want to be agreeable, but we're pretty held to some strict rules.
Okay, thank you on that. We'll move on to the next BOA 24-05, consideration and action on the variance request from street and access easement with standards located at 4680 East, 2650 North Eden, Utah. Tammy, you're also the presenter on this one.
I am, yes. This presentation will be, I think, a little bit shorter. The applicant has submitted a pretty detailed narrative, and hopefully the board has had a chance to kind of read through that and understand where the applicant is coming from. What the request is, and I'm going to read a little bit of this. So our county ordinance outlines minimum right-of-way standards, minimum access standards. We were talking length and width, minimum travel surface area, things like that. The applicant, Mr. Cody Holker, owns this parcel here, which is located off of 2650 North, 4680 East in Eden. This is Snowcrest Junior High, to orient you. As you can see, there's a substantial stream that runs through the property. So the applicant who's looking to subdivide this will have challenges likely kind of along the way. But in this particular case, the applicant, I'm going to kind of go through the development history on this. So the applicant back in 2019 owned both of these parcels here. So the subject parcel and the parcel to the east. In 2019, in 2021, the applicant divided this parcel off and sold it. That new owner went through a subdivision process, went through a rezone process, recorded a development agreement. Our ordinance, when we're looking at subdivisions, requires actually that based upon the impact that you're creating, that you dedicate, especially when you're along a right of way, that you dedicate however much you own towards the center line of the road. In this particular case with Mr. Allen, his area that he dedicated was pretty small in width. Now it goes across his frontage, but it's anywhere from 16 to 19 feet along here. What this means for Mr. Holker is he doesn't quite meet the minimum width standard to be able to legally access this as a lot of record. So in order for us to issue a building permit on it, he has to go through a subdivision process, and our subdivision standards require either a public or privately dedicated right of way that meets minimum county standards, which are anywhere from 50 feet on up in width. For a private access standard, which was an avenue that Mr. Holker was looking for, the minimum width is 24 feet with 20 feet in width of travel surface. And that is not met here. So the applicant is seeking a variance to those standards so that he can develop this into possibly a 3-lot subdivision. Again, you'll be tasked with looking at the same standards as you do with any variance request. Now, this has been on an agenda previously. We weren't able to hold the meeting, and in further discussions, the question came up, is this really an appropriate item for the Board of Adjustment? And after some consultation and investigation with our legal department, they determined that this is the most appropriate body to hear this request. And so Mr. Holker has presented this application for you to consider. Again, is this self-imposed? Does this create a hardship for the property owner? Are there other ways that we can work around this? We've had a subdivision application in from Mr. Holker since April of last year. We haven't accepted it in because it doesn't meet our minimum requirements. So it's still kind of sitting there. And so in September, Mr. Holker filed a request for a variance, and this is the first opportunity that the board has had to be able to meet together and hear this. Do you have any questions for me?
Tammy, if this lot was, I mean, he wants to subdivide it, as I understand what you're saying. If this was a 1-lot, not subdivision, but a 1-lot approval, would that meet this county standard even under that circumstance?
No, it wouldn't.
Because of the road.
Right, the
width.
width.
Okay. So we're being asked to approve a 3-lot,
Right.
and the county wouldn't even approve a 1-lot.
Well, the difference, actually, the question as far as how many lots go in here is that's not what's being placed before you.
Yeah, that's not within your purview
Yeah.
right now. All you're looking at is the width.
So the question is, in what circumstances do we allow these private shared driveways, if you will? And those we do allow in certain circumstances for smaller subdivisions. If this was a larger subdivision, the private access would be off the table anyway, and they'd have to meet a minimum probably 60 foot. So
What's numbered is 4690, I believe. Is that the parcel that was deeded off, parcel 22407001?
correct.
Okay.
This used to be all one piece here.
Tammy, do you know how, what the future plans are for 2650 North? That's quite a large road. Is that
I can
planned to
show you.
continue?
Yeah, it is planned to continue. In fact, we have development to the west and have required some road stubs from that developer so that at some point 2650 East can continue through. Let me pull up the map here. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. And I'm going to close this. So here's 2650 North here. There's a developer to the west who is dedicating roadway here specifically to eventually connect to 2650 North.
Okay.
So this is planned to continue through to the Nordic area. And there's a roadway that will drop south to Highway 158 as well. So it is planned to be a significant connection. Now, we have encouraged the property owner to work with the owner to the south. I know that nothing has come from any discussions that may or may not have happened, so I can't speak to those. But we have encouraged him to work with the property owner to the south, as the property owner to the south owns a significant portion of that right of way width still.
The request here also I mean, I'm looking at this. There's not even a crossing across the river there, is there?
Not on the applicant's property, no. There is a bridge. There's a private bridge here that this property owner has, if he didn't install it, he has maintained it and updated it fairly recently. The applicant during the subdivision process will have to install a county standard bridge across the river. But
Would those bridges be connected to each other, or just widen?
Not at this point. The one to the south is private. It lies on a completely separate parcel.
Okay.
Okay, at some point, this bridge will be used as part of the public right of way to go all the way across to the west. But
The new one on the new property.
correct. So the county engineering would require that is built to county standard right out of the gate for that reason.
And that would be part of the subdivision review requirements.
But before we can even get to that, he needs a variance on the road width, which is why we're looking at this today.
Correct. I do have, let me show you the dedication plat for the parcel to the east here. There we go. Just to kind of zoom in and get a close-up of what that looks like. You guys see this okay?
Mhm.
Okay. Here you've got 60, now this is proposed to be a 60-foot wide right of way, as you can see here, and it is up until it reaches the adjacent parcel, and it's 16 feet here and just under 20 feet here.
So as you've stated in here, it appears that the hardship was actually at least partially created when he sold off part of the land.
Yeah, the board could see it that way, yes. I mean, the owner did own both of these pieces. I was not over the project that divided this up. actually. So it was deeded out first. It didn't go through a subdivision process to create those two parcels.
Yeah.
It was divided through deed, sold, and then that new owner took it through a one lot subdivision process to get it to be a legal lot.
Is it okay to have discussion up here amongst ourselves a little?
Well, we will in just a minute. Yeah, we can do that once we're done. Any other questions for Tammy? Okay, board can discuss, but it's open. Yeah, so it's whatever you would like to.
So is this Cody on the screen here?
Yes, we do have the applicant and likely at least one of his representatives that is online.
So which one is the applicant? The
Cody Hooker.
Okay, I see the name, but I don't see the picture. I see this other fellow here, but
That's him.
this,
That's the associate.
okay. Okay,
Okay.
is Luke, is it,
Luke Kennard
Kennard.
is with Mr. Hooker.
okay,
Chair, do you want to take online comments? Typically in the past, the board has said either here or we do the whole meeting online.
yeah,
That's just something that
no, I think,
we've done in the past.
yeah, and I think we follow that same past guidelines, so. So back to Ben, you had something you wanted.
Just a note, even when he had both parcels as one, because he didn't own this parcel to the south. I'm assuming that he didn't have the ability to even grant a wide enough variance. He would have been pinched between the two properties. Am I understanding that correctly? Maybe I'm understanding it wrong.
Sorry, one more time, Mr. Peterson.
I wish I could point with my and show you.
Oh, I see.
You discussed when these were one parcel.
Yeah, he owned both parcels side by side, right?
Yep.
But because of lot,
There's a choke point.
there's a
right
choke
there.
point from the home that's existing on that little lot there.
Yeah.
And the property to the south, there was no way for him to grant access wide enough for an easement.
So even without that parcel.
Is that, am I correct in that understanding?
That's what it appears.
Right.
That there would have been, you see.
Right here.
Yeah. This. There is still only 16 feet. So even if he still owned both.
Mhm.
Still.
He couldn't have got through.
Now, I will tell you that the owner of this piece here has a development agreement that's recorded to this. The development agreement allows them this width here. That's why the current owner has a one lot subdivision and he can obtain building permits on this. He went through a rezone process. There are often negotiations that go along with granting a rezone. I was not part of that application, but my assumption is that that width was part of those negotiations. And because it's in the development agreement is bound to this particular parcel. It does not, however, extend beyond those boundaries and go on to Mr. Holker's piece.
Tammy, are you willing to mention that I was told I would be able to speak by virtue of having attended the last meeting that didn't appear, and you informed me that an accommodation would be made that would
I don't know
allow
what
for
I'm
me to
hearing here,
speak?
but we need to mute that.
Well, that's highly unfair.
Was there communication that he could participate via Zoom?
I wasn't involved in the reason, that he could participate
Yeah.
in Zoom. That I don't know. We sent him a Zoom link.
That would be up to you, Chair, if you would like to entertain that, if there was.
He's the applicant.
He's the applicant.
I will mention the applicant does not reside in the state and he did fly in for the last Board of
Yeah,
Adjustment
that
meeting that was
was-
canceled.
And normally we would not participate on Zoom with an applicant, but I think under this circumstance, I'm willing to grant
I agree.
his input at this point. So if, and is it Cody that we're hearing or is it Luke that we're hearing? I'm not sure which one we were hearing there.
That was Cody Hoker.
Okay, so it was Cody who is the owner.
Yeah.
And the applicant. So Cody, if you will, just state we've got your name, but state for the record your name and your current address where you're at, and then share with us your perspective.
So first, thank you for allowing this. My name is Cody Hoker. I am at 11148 Zealand Avenue North, Champlin, Minnesota, 55316. I would have made every effort to be there, but for what I understood was the accommodation given the last time we had a mix-up. So I greatly appreciate this. I would like to, I appreciate Tammy's recital of the facts. I would like to make a few points clarified. From a factual standpoint, it was me who recorded the development agreement. Now, as all parties in attendance are aware, those development agreements are arrived at with the county planning office. They are signed off by the planning committee and are recorded as a matter of public record. In that development agreement, and if there's any way, Tammy, you could help me by putting up on the screen that exhibit that you had with, that was part of the, that Peregrine plat map. As part of this development agreement and working extensively with the county, it was of paramount importance to them to keep Clark Lane on the same trajectory that it was on. I could have dedicated a larger public easement, greater than 16 feet. That was entirely within my purview to do, within my authority. I controlled that. Where I take issue with the notion that it's self-imposed is to draw that conclusion implies that I have the ability to dictate to the county engineers the trajectory of their road. Now, why I wasn't certain that this was even the proper venue is because I'm not really asking for a variance. I'm asking for the county to honor the agreement that they had me sign and they recorded in order to allow the rezone and development. Now, the reason it's only 16 feet is you can see there on that map, that's the width required to keep Clark Lane on its same trajectory. And the language in the development agreement reads, Weber County agrees that this extension will not be of a width greater than is reasonably necessary given the current right-of-way width and alignment where it stubs into the property. So it was the county that dictated to me that it be 16 feet wide, and that's why it's not consistent 16 feet the entire length, because it curves as the projected Clark Lane would curve. So every portion of that public easement, every measurement was dictated to me by the county. The county made representations to me that a public access is adequate for accessing my property. I would not have left myself landlocked. I would have had the lawsuit back then instead of now if I would have ever thought I couldn't rely on the representations of the county and the agreement that the county made with me. That public access isn't mine to try to vary, it's yours. And it is your responsibility to go before a court and tell the court, when it comes to that, that it's the county who made a deal that the county doesn't want to honor. And that's why we're in front of a judge. Not Cody made a poor decision other than I put my faith in the county officials. So what we're really here today to decide is if the county's willing to honor the agreement that the county already made in establishing this public access to my property. Now, as contained in the application is the ordinance that allows this committee to arrive at any road width that they feel is adequate given the special circumstances. And the special circumstances that exist are, that's the width the county asked for in the beginning. So they came to me, we had a development agreement, all parties were in agreement that that's sufficient. Then imagine my surprise when I submit to continue the plan and they say, oh, hold on, the land that we reserved for our public access is inadequate for you to gain access to your property. I don't believe that is a good faith argument. And I certainly don't think it's a good faith argument to say that that was of my own doing, other than, yes, I did enter into a development agreement. Yes, it was me that worked with the county, but I didn't dictate a 16-foot or a 19-foot public access. That's what they wanted for the road, because when Clark Lane, and I would say if Clark Lane extends, it still requires the approval of private landowners. If it gets approved, then that 16-foot access point to my property would be taken over by the road, and I would have to stub in a new intersection to that road, but that's contemplated under the ordinance. So the ordinance contemplates that all I would have to do is dedicate an appropriate amount. And by doing so, when and if the road is improved, I would just have to tie into it at that point at my expense. But what the feeling is that, well, because one day Clark Lane may be expanded, that we ought not to allow this access point on the 16-foot public access, then that would beg the question, why is there a public access there? In all respect to the panel, I would challenge any one of the members to contemplate what legal argument could possibly be presented, given the fact that the county's fingerprints are all over this, as to why they wanted this vector, they wanted this alignment, they wanted this configuration, but now it's not good enough for them. And that's what has me a little bit dumbfounded, is that it's come to this point to merely ask that the county honor the agreement that was arrived at through discussions and deliberations and working with the county. Now, I'm not asking for a variance of my property. I'm asking that you allow your public access to be adequate to access my property. That's what I'm really asking. Now, under the private road allowance that could be at the discretion, I can't ask for it. It can only be initiated by the planning committee. The ordinance is silent as to the road width requirements because it knows, the drafters were wise enough to know certain times a solution needs to be arrived at that's in the best interest of all parties, and it may not fit right in line with our standard road ordinances. That's why it's silent in that ordinance as to the road width, but that has to be brought forth by the planning committee. I can't request that. So it's a two-part. I'm requesting that the planning committee offer this as a solution, and then that the county honors the agreement. And really, in my mind, the argument before the court isn't that I need a variance, it's that the development agreement is my variance, that the development agreement is my right of passage to my land. And it would be on the onus of the county, it would be their burden to carry that this public access that they established now is inadequate. I don't believe that would be my burden to carry, that I need to ask for a variance. I have a recorded document that gives me public access to my property.
Okay, Cody, let me just stop you there. Rex Mumford, the chair. As a board of adjustment, what we look at is application request, and the request that's before us tonight is consideration and action on a request for a variance from street and access easements width standard located at the 4680 East 2650 North in Eden. We're not here to address the county, what may have been said or what your impressions were from the past, but we are looking at the consideration and action on a request from you for a variance from street and access easement with standards, which the standards, Tammy, I think you inserted them. Design would have a minimum of 24 feet. Is that?
Yeah, I will mention that this section of ordinance, the shared private lane section, was created in 2022 to replace the access exception. And that access exception had standards that allowed for the width to be as narrow as 16 feet. So likely at the time when Mr. Holker was going through this development and deeding this off, it could very well have been that at the time those standards were in place, which the timeline seems right to me for that. But our ordinance has changed since then, as of August of 2022.
And as those ordinances change, the new ordinance takes precedence over the previous ordinance on behalf of property owner who is not.
It does, unless there's a development agreement
Yeah.
over that parcel that would memorialize those standards for
Okay.
them. And Rick may have more to say on that.
Tammy, was this parcel that he's looking at, was that part of this development agreement?
No, the subject parcel was not part of the development agreement.
That's so in the case where it was not part of that, then it would have to comply with the current standard, which is as you stated, the 24 feet.
Correct.
So while.
Well, please let me interject. Please let me interject. I am not asking for a variance on my parcel. Once the road hits my parcel, I am completely in agreement to make it 24 feet. I am not asking to vary my parcel. I'm asking to vary the public right-of-way, which was created as part of the development agreement.
Okay. Thank you, Cody. Board, do you have any questions for Cody specifically? Marshall? No?
Do not.
Ben? Neil?
Not
Okay.
Could I add that I talked to the fire marshal too, and his perspective was that he misunderstood he said he would talk to Tammy, and hopefully he has, and Tammy could verify this. I haven't had an opportunity to do that with her, and I apologize. But prior to our last meeting, when I saw his notes that he had concerns, once he understood that the only portion of my road that was to be 16 feet was this public access, he stated to me that there would be no issue with the fire department on that. So from my standpoint, the public safety didn't seem to be an issue. It didn't appear as though any harm would come to any party by granting this variance, that the only harm that could arise would be to deny it. I didn't see how any other safety nor the community at large would be harmed. And furthermore, there was one other clarification I'd like to make in the recital, and that is Clark's Lane Bridge. The bridge for Clark Lane would not be the bridge that I am building. And as you can see from the map on Clark Lane's trajectory, it would not cross my land. And I can put the bridge across anywhere on that river as long as it's in the corners within the boundaries of my land. And that would not be the bridge that's being utilized for Clark Lane. The current bridge from the landowner to the south would be located where the Clark Lane Bridge would go. So I just, to whatever extent that impacts, mine would be basically a driveway to 1, 2, 3 homes with a bridge adequate to service that pursuant to county standards. But it all hinges, the only thing before the board today is, will the board allow an entry onto my property using the public access that's of record, which is only 16 feet. Now, I will say they've also encouraged me to talk to my neighbors, which I have, but even if the landowner, which is currently with the development plan on the land directly north of the public access, uh, even if he were to grant me the fee, because that was the first proposals, well, Cody, why don't you ask for 8 feet from your neighbor to the north, who I've dealt with and is a great guy. And he may, even entertain that, but the reality of it is to do that would infringe upon the existing development agreement. So he and I would not be able to unilaterally alter that development agreement. And the additional 8 feet that he would give me would cut into the public utility easement and all that's already laid out in this development agreement. And it would then serve to change the trajectory of Clark Lane. So when Clark Lane does continue down the road, now all of a sudden, once it reaches that point of the road, it would jolt 8 feet further to the north, which the county would never do that. So requiring the 8 additional feet, even if I were to obtain it, benefits the county in no way. There's nothing derived from that additional 8 feet. It would actually hinder their plans to carry Clark Lane forward. And it would make it so it's not on the same trajectory or vector or alignment as Clark Lane presently sits. So that's why I had hoped in coming before this board that they would allow that, yes, although once it reaches Cody's property, it must be 24 feet. We will allow this public access, which was sufficient at the time it was created, to still be sufficient. And I think that would be grandfathered in. I think it'd be hard pressed for a judge to say why it wouldn't be. There's nothing that the county's harmed in no way in allowing it, in requiring 8 feet north to be obtained. It would be harmed. We'd have to redo the development agreement. It would throw off the alignment. There's only one conclusion where anybody is harmed, and that is to deny me the ability to access my property and to build a home on it.
Okay, Cody, thank you for your comments. I think we've heard a perspective there sufficiently tonight. Thank you.
Thank
Okay,
you.
board. Oh, Tammy, do you have any final comments
No.
that you would like to make?
Was readying myself for any questions you may
Oh,
have.
good. I still go back to board. This is an applicant request for consideration action on a variance from street and access easement width standards located at that address. It sounds like from the county that while that standard may have been 16 feet in the past, the current standard as of 2022 was changed to 24 feet with a minimum surface improvement of 20 feet. So in order for, so that would, I guess, warrant the reason for a variance. We would have to grant a variance to allow this access to be at a lesser width than what the county now allows.
Right. Counties, we do not have the authority to be able to vary from the standards outlined in the ordinance.
Yeah, well, and I think we understand that. So with that, board, Rick is the planning director. Do you have any input that you would like to share with the board tonight?
No, the only thing you'd be looking at is those criterias outlined in the staff report. And they have to meet all of those in order to grant that.
Right.
Tammy, I was wondering, and I may have missed it in here. They're asking for this exceptions so that it'd be 16 feet wide, but how long is it? Is this public access? And also speaking on public access, what was the intent of the public access? Was it foot traffic? Was it horse traffic? Was it for a single resident? Was it for a freeway? Was it for, because public access could be foot traffic. What was the intent of the original agreement?
Of the development agreement, of the
yeah,
subdivision approval.
Yes, when he expressed that he was allowed or granted this 16-foot public access to access his property or this property in question, what was the intended use of that access? Does that make sense?
This was for road access. It's dedication for the public road, so it's for anything that happens in the roadway. In this situation, where it's a private, or it's this segment right through here, it would be for vehicular.
Vehicular. Okay.
Now, if the applicant owned 70 feet or 50 feet in, they would have dedicated 50 feet of width. But they only owned between 16 and 19 feet. So that was all we could ask of them at the time. As far as how that was arrived upon, discussions regarding, there were 2 development agreements recorded to this parcel. The latter one is the one that was recorded by the current owner who had it rezoned to commercial. And again, that may have been part of the previous development agreement. And if Cortland were here, he could tell us if one of those took precedence over the other. We're looking at the most recent one that's tied to this particular subdivision. Unfortunately, I was not part of the rezone and the development agreement process. It was a different member of our planning staff. So I don't know what the discussions were, but I can tell you that at the time when this was recorded, the fire district, and we worked closely with fire district, consistently allowed for accesses to be as narrow as 16 feet with a minimum of 12 feet of travel surface at the time. Since then, they've realized that with so many of those types of accesses, they've come across a lot of problems with being able to pass a couple of fire trucks or even a fire truck and a vehicle trying to get in and out of an area.
Yeah.
And so they're the ones that, I believe that's a fire standard, and that's why it's in our ordinance.
Okay. And how long is this
This
access in question?
141 feet.
Okay.
Tammy, I have a
You're talking the
question.
bottleneck section, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Am I to understand correctly that if the property was purchased by the applicant in 2019, and had he developed the subdivision at that time, it would have been granted access?
Likely,
Likely.
yes. Mhm.
Just sharing a perspective. I live on one of these and it's a nightmare. It's an absolute nightmare. My lane is 20 feet, but with the bushes that grow in, it's about 18 and it's a literal nightmare. We've had cement trucks break down and stop all traffic in and out. And so I can see his point. I see that there would be harm possibly to him. There's harm to the county, but there would be harm to those that build there because there are unforeseen events that will take place on that narrow stretch that they'll have to live with forever. And I've actually lost more sleep in my life to this narrow lane that I live on. So yes.
He's making a comment,
I'm making a comment.
personalized comment.
So
Take a look at the consideration items that help guide us as a board, whether to consider or grant an easement or deny an easement. And Tammy, I think you've listed them here as well, but the literal enforcement of the ordinance, which is the current ordinance of 24 feet, would cause an unreasonable hardship for the applicant. Unreasonable hardship gets to be kind of, it's a little bit vague because on one hand, it's just as Neil presented, while a 16-foot wide lane right now may not be a hardship down the road, that could be for a future owner. And I almost feel like would cause an unreasonable hardship for the applicant. That might be the one of the top considerations in determining whether or not literal enforcement of the code would cause unreasonable hardship if it's self-imposed. I'm not sure that this is totally self-imposed, because even before he subdivided, he didn't have a wide enough stretch of land there. Are there special circumstances to the property? What's the thoughts of the board on the special circumstances of the property?
Clark Lane, if the county was requesting that it follow its trajectory, then I guess that's a special circumstance of the property.
When you've got a river, you've got a cross, there's quite a few special circumstances, but I don't know that any of those really affect us tonight in this consideration. Tammy, your impression on the general plan, would granting this affect the general plan and be contrary to public interest or not?
Well, I don't know how far Director Grover wants me to go on this. I think eventually we'll get a connection through there. That's, people oftentimes say, I'm never going to develop, I'm never going to develop. And at some point they develop, and we will get road dedication through there as development occurs. So do I think that granting this circumstance will mean that we will forever have a 16-foot wide road? No, I don't. Do I think developing 3 lots over there is going to be detrimental to the general plan? I don't, as planning staff, having reviewed the general plan. Director Grover may have a different opinion on that. But no, I don't.
If Clark Lane was to be extended,
Mhm.
this would not be a question then, would it?
Correct.
His
Right.
access would be.
Yep.
Would be adequate.
If Mr. Clark to the south was ready to dedicate that, this would be a non-issue, and
Right.
Mr. Holker would be likely through a subdivision process by
Right.
now.
But because that hasn't happened, it's presented to the Board of Adjustment. Is there a motion with the board regarding the actual applicant, which is consideration and action on a request for a variance from street and access easement with standards?
I might make a motion
There we go.
based on previous advice that we received from council on a previous application in a separate meeting, that this could be considered self-imposed because he did have access, he did have the opportunity to develop the land previous to 2022 when the ordinance was changed. And so is that, I guess if legal was here, I would ask the question, is that considered you delayed your subdivision, you had the opportunity, and now you have now got to comply with the new codes that have been created. So that's my motion, would be to deny based on it was self-imposed.
Okay. Are there any other items in the list that you also feel like would attribute towards your motion?
I'm sensitive to the applicant's plea and trying to be I just know that we are held to these 5 criteria, and when I look at the 5 criteria, that's the one that jumps out at me.
Okay. All right, so a motion to deny based upon the self-imposed rule that we consider as a board. Is there a second to the motion?
I second the motion.
A second by Marshall. Any other discussions? All in favor of the motion to deny, Marshall?
Aye.
Ben?
Aye.
Neil?
Aye.
And the chair will vote aye. So the motion would be denied. Okay, thank you. Thank you for all those that were there. And rules of order, Rick?
The rules of order now are approved by the legislative body. That's how they should have been a long time ago. And so the legislative body is the one who approves your rules of order. And that's with the planning commissions as well.
Any discussion or questions regarding? Okay. If, Rick, do you have anything else for us tonight? Okay, otherwise I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I second.
No, I'm looking for a motion. Marshall?
I thought you said you do motion.
I would like to. Do you second
I
that?
will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Very good. Thank you, everyone.